Welcome everyone to the first video in this new project I'm calling Burn Pit. Um, what you're seeing in this one will be page 5 in part 1. Under the image. Um, let's paste that new layer. And I'm just going to put a text bubble in here. Let's see. Let's see if I can put it. No, I think it looked better this way. Although, let's see if... No, I didn't. Maybe if we bring this... Okay, that looks a little more balanced. It's sort of, while I generally try and keep sort of a certain style I've sort of set up from almost the beginning. I have kind of, you've probably noticed I've been gradually making changes. And that, probably a lot of them have been more subtle than others. In here, I'm kind of experimenting. I've taken my generic white text bubble, text box from the Shrimp of the House series and sort of just given it a gradient overlay between this subtle pale bluish color and white. Um, it's sort of unlike the metal textures that I was using in sort of the other muscle growth stories, including Iron Brotherhood. Because of the nature of the gradient, I've got to resize the box specifically to fit the text bubble and trim off about as little as possible. So we select the invert and go edit, cut, not that one, edit, undo. I'm on the wrong layer. Whereas with the metal textures, I can kind of cut from different parts of the box to give it like a slightly different look. This one, I'm kind of stuck myself in in sort of this specific look that's got to be the same. And I'm probably not making much sense. Yeah. Invert, select row. We're still going on the 2 from previous that we've established in previous books, and we will go cut right. Yes. And there I've got a box with a slight gradient to make it look more interesting. Let's merge that down. The other thing is, like I said, with the Shrimp of the House series, I was using the OpenGL render image, and I think did I start with Little Bro? I shifted over to 3 Delight. It's because I kind of like the look. Oh my god. What is going on with this? So we gotta cancel. I think I've been playing around with lighting a little bit more lately. Let's close that. Where is it here? It's the beer. We've got to fix the texture. Let's go glass, right? Okay, glass is, when I get that, it's usually the ambient. So we've got to put ambient on. I don't know why it was set up that way. Let's try it again. But in this project, I've sort of given some of the characters, like my main character Roger here, sort of a resource intense hair piece. Let's see if that beer bottle is. Oh my god, no, it's not. Okay, you know what I'm going to do with the beer bottle? Okay, so what is the color? 44, 36, 24. So what I'm going to do is come over here. Let's find library. We come into shaders. DS default. And we're just going to, let's see, 44, 36, 24. Oh, it's already, okay. Now we can come in and see, okay, so specular, let's take specular down. Think. Okay, let's turn off refraction. And I think, can I leave reflection on? So if you notice, if you look really closely, you can tell I've got reflection on a lot of these. I've put reflection on a lot of these props to sort of, because it's like, right now sitting here, I'm looking at my coffee table and, the light reflecting off the top of the table, there's a reflection. So it's like, I can see, everything that's sitting on the coffee table is reflecting in the surface. That's, what what I go with by trying to put reflective surfaces on basically everything. Oh my god, that beer bottle. The other possibility too is this. I'm gonna have to, I think, do the same with the beer. Oh my god. Let's put ambient strength on, opacity. I don't know, 50. Reset. Research. I think specular. Let's try it again. But yeah, between the reflections on everything and this resource heavy hair, I'm going to warn you now that these pictures are taking a long time to render. Um, I'm not complaining now. Come on, give me the beer bottle. Oh my god, I swear. I'm not complaining about it now, it's just how it is, but I'm sure by the middle of the book it'll start wearing on me. I'm going to let this resolve a little bit to see what the heck is. Oh my god, of course it's not going to. It's going to wait on the bottle, so there it goes. You know what? Now it's looking like glossy, like either the glossiness or the reflection. So, God. And this thing was supposed. This is an asset I picked up off the Daz store, not something I made myself. And the material is supposed to be set up to work with 3 to light. So I should not have to spend this much time um, fixing this product. Um, take reflection off. This is glass. You know what? No, let's give it a 5% reflection. The liquid, I can turn it off. So, so it's just a heads up. There's going to be a lot of cutting because most of these pictures is going to take longer than the work on the. I'll show you the bottle. There it is. Yes. God. It's taken a lot longer to render than it's taken me to process the work here. In most cases, it's taking. I mean, I can't say it's taking that much time. These are like over 5 minutes for these, but when I render the half pages that you've probably seen in the earlier pages of the story, um, I've been increasing the preset size. So instead of 1920 by 1080, it's 3840 by 2160 or whatever. I think that's what it is. Basically doubling the pixel size, and depending on what's in the scene, that's been taking a long time. So the last picture I did, um, was Roger and Wes, and both of them have basically hair that's weighing on the resources when it comes time to render. That image of the two of them standing at the door took somewhere between 30 and 40 minutes. So, and I know it says it's only taken like 2.25 minutes to get 60%, but it's always like, see, it's only halfway through the second sort of round of resolution. Once it gets to the third and starts kind of fine tune this last uh, round, this is where all the time gets eaten up. This is where it's going to take for her. Yeah, let me see if I can. I'm not sure you can see the reflections yet. So the countertop here. Oh yeah, if you see this distortion here, that's going to be that's going to be reflection. Once this ends up resolving in once this sort of finalizes the picture, you're going to see something in this corner. Although that'll end up getting cut out, but it should be the same on the countertop. You may or may not see stuff in the countertop depending on how the light's hitting it, depending on the angle of the camera. And I know, oh yeah, see, once this resolves, you'll see something in the console. You can see the DVD player reflecting here. And yeah, the floor has a slight reflectivity too. So it should be subtle, but so it's not a mirror, so you're not looking at a mirror, but if you look over here, it's once it resolves, you see, if you look closely, you can see a slight discoloration here. Once this picture is finished and this is sort of fine-tuned, you're going to see you're going to see sort of a ghost of the couch in the floor there, that sort of thing. But like, as you can see, we're already at 5 minutes and 15 seconds, and it's got a ways to go. So we'll snip here, and I'll show you what this looks like when it's finished. Okay, so here's the picture. I was talking about rendering it bigger, and when this started hitting the 11-minute mark, I realized I still had the dimensions set at the 38 whatever size. So instead of waiting like another 20 minutes for it to render, I stopped it, put the dimension sets to 1920 by 1080 like I usually use, and re-rendered it. And like, as you can see, it took almost 8 minutes to render it at the 1920 by 1080 size. And I think the lighting is such that, like, at this angle, you can't see anything reflected in the top or the thing. And that little discoloration I saw over here wasn't reflection. It was the end of the island and a bit of the floor peeking through. But, you still get, like, you see the reflection in here. you have to look really close to see it in the floor over here, but it's there. That's kind of, what I go into. It's like it's kind of like doing all the modeling and the texturing myself for a bit now. It's the kind of things you start noticing in the real world. Like you'd never notice the reflection off a table. Let's see, I want to save that. I don't want to close it. That would be an oops. You start noticing reflections, how light hits, that sort of thing. It's kind of crazy. So let's open that as layers. And 34 scale. There. Cut and select none. There we go. Bring it down there. Okay, so we're done with this. We staged this for one image. Parent. I don't know why, but I'm going to keep this for now. I'm going to, let's see, Control C, and then Control V. We'll put that exactly where those layers are. And what I'm going to do is, let's see, that and the beer. And I'll put it in this group I've called unused. Unlike other projects where I just sit and put together wardrobes for the main characters, um, in this one I'm going to kind of make it up as I go. So I don't really have a grouping for clothing. I've created one for Roger because we've already changed his clothes once, but other than that, nothing. So delete. So, let's see. Delete. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do here. Where's it? There it is. Keys, and then we will Control D to put him sitting on the floor. Let's delete that key. Oh, and I gotta delete this one too. And then Control D because we've gotta reset him to the floor. And we're gonna send him off to the bedroom. So it's the conundrum I'm having for no particular reason is that I want to do one image of him just here, and then show the next one of his wife Maxine in bed, looking like she's already asleep. So the conundrum is over whether to stage her now or wait until, let's see. Uh-oh. Oh my god. Okay, something is very off here, so I'm going to cut out and fix it. So the idea is that normally I create the base characters at frame 0, and then I come in and then I'll set it to frame 1, so that when I delete the keys, I go back to that preset pose. Problem is, I had a crash yesterday where I forgot to save it after reloading the characters, so I basically, when I brought it back up and reloaded the characters, I forgot to send it. I get so used to working as if it's already on frame 1, I forgot to reset it to frame 1. So it's not just, so when I delete the keys, it's not just setting them back to the base pose, but when I resize the characters, let me come in here to show hidden properties. Basically, when I make the characters different heights, instead of just using the scale and going wee like that, that's how big. The idea is I basically lengthen or shorten the limbs, because unless somebody's been like working out or got fat, taller people are going to have thinner limbs, shorter people are probably going to have thicker limbs. So I sit and do that by changing the scale on each of the limbs. By just changing the Y scale, and on the arms, it's the X scale. So when I go and reset all those, I've gone and reset all the keys, I've basically deleted the lengths. So I'm going to start over. So that's like what's going on here. I'm going to cut out, reload the characters, get this set up the way it should be, and we'll continue. So I've reloaded the characters, fixed that issue, and I sort of went ahead and rendered the image because it took, 7 minutes and 7 seconds. And I didn't think we needed to come back just to say, hey, here's the scene we're going to render. By the way, we're cutting out because this is going to take 7 minutes to render. So I just went ahead and did it. Oops, we're 34. We're still in that. Oh my god. We're still up here in the top panel. Let's see. And it was, while I was doing that, I already staged Maxine. Let's show Maxine in the bed. I didn't complete this because I thought I'd show this. Oops. Let's see. Oops. Close one. So I'm pretty sure I did this in a previous video, but I'm going to show it to you again just in case. the idea is basically for blankets, I've just started using a plane subdivided into a lot of polygons and then given it a D-force modifier so that I could use their Daz's D-force engine to sort of drape it over the bed or over them. The downside is it's a pain in the butt. It can take a lot of time to do with characters. So one of the tricks that one of the tricks I've done, or I should say, the trick I've done to sort of really cut down on the time this takes is, and actually, well, I'm looking at this, I want to see if, oh no, okay, um, is I do this in another instance of Daz Studios and come back. So we'll do is, since I want the blanket over Maxine, I've posed Maxine how I want her. Actually, I'm gonna let's twist the foot a little bit. Oops, I guess it's side to side. Just a little. Yeah, it's. The thing is, like anything under the blanket, you're not gonna see, so it doesn't have to be perfect. For I get the toes like inside each other. It doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to be hidden, but basically what I start off with is I pose the character that's going to be under the blanket. I select her and send her to Hexagon. Wait for Hexagon to open. There it goes. Any day now. Oh my god. Okay. So we send her over here, and then I can, let's see, and then what I'll do is send her back. And when I send her back, I can create a prop instead of a figure. It'll create a static object in this shape. And I'll show you that. Let's see, create a prop and accept. And now sort of select none. So because because once I take it over, actually hold on. I'm gonna merge these. Yeah, I guess I need the clothing. I don't need the hair. Let's delete that. Okay, so not exactly sure how much that gets cut out because when you start messing with the models, it ends up being like nudity in there that can't be shown on, that would probably violate YouTube's terms of services. So not at this point, as at the point I'm recording this, I'm not sure how much of that got trimmed out, but basically we sent the model over to Hexagon. um, I merged the clothing and the person into this one static form and sent it back to Daz Studios. So now what I'm going to do is, let's come into the home. I think I already did it. Yep, there's the bed. We unparented the bed. So what I'm going to do is, let's file save as a scene subset. I want files. I'm just going to call this bed, enter, and then deselect everything but the bed and the form, which is our model, and we will accept. Then we'll come over here, get to the desktop. I'm going to open Daz Studio up here. This is the Pro build. This is the official release where I work in the one I've been working in is the beta version. This gets annoying. The last few sort of updates, I think I'm not sure if it's since they moved to Daz Studio 4.12, or if it was right after they eliminated your ability to have multiple windows open. So let's come into files and grab the bed. And I'm going to focus on the bed. There's the bed. I need the blanket. Let's unparent that. So basically getting around, I didn't want to delete. No. Okay. So it's basically so I can work in two separate windows. I'll use the beta version for my primary work, and then I'll use the public build, the pro version, whatever you want to call it. I'll use the official release for any auxiliary work like this. Um, free simulate. See, I froze this because I had issues with it before, so I'm going to free simulation off. I'm going to open up simulation settings, and I'm going to go clear, and see there's my plane. I'm going to bring it up here like this, just above her, and we're going to move it so that it's not covering her head. Actually, let's go down to the shoulder like that. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is simulate. Oh my god. Fine, do it. I don't know what it's got to. It's basically when you work with these figures, when you work with the people as figures, this can take absolutely forever for it to run through this. But if you convert people into props, then there are no figures for it to kind of take issue with. So doing it like this, the simulation is being done very quickly. Oops. Oops. Except one thing is, oh no, okay, it worked. I was gonna say, usually I've got to put a plane here to simulate a floor, otherwise it normally doesn't. Normally it doesn't. It acts like there's no floor, and it would have just draped it forever, but for some reason it did. And even though it's off the floor, I don't plan to show that, so I'm going to live with that. One thing I do need to do is expand the blanket, so I get rid of this poke through. And maybe if I just raise it up a little bit, there we go. That does it. See any flaws with the posing as far as her legs are onto the blanket, so you don't see anything that's problematic. Now what I'm going to do is, now that I've got the shaped blanket, where's free simulation on, just for the heck of it. I don't have to, but I do it anyways. I'm going to save it as a subset, scene subset. And we need to go into library, files, and we're going to call this one blanket. Blanket. And all I need is blanket. I don't need the bed or her. Go accept. Dump that over there. Come over here. And what I'm going to do is we're going to come into the file folder and blanket. And it's going to put it over her. What I do have to do is make sure that one's invisible. And then I can go ahead and delete the form. So now she's under a blanket. It's not the best looking blanket. It looks more like a sheet, but then again, this was implied to be summertime, so let's take the eye. Instead of using the sliders under head, let's take the eye and just like that. I think unfortunately you can't see the other eye is closed, but and then I am going to render that. And we render. While that's going, I've got these two that are still not bordered, so we'll go layer, new layer. And we'll grab that one, layer to image size. Yeah, gosh, it's for some reason this project's been plagued by problems, and I'm only 4 pages in here on page 5. Um, like I said, normally I'll load the characters and end up doing a save at some point. Characters is like invert trait. But for some reason, I ended up getting started on it right away. Forgot to do a save on the first 2 pages where it's husband and wife here. I got to that last panel, the last panel in that sequence, and in trying to set in sort of making adjustments um, ahead of rendering, Dash Studios ends up crashing one panel from finishing. So I end up having to not only reload the characters, but basically restage that panel somewhat just for that one that scene, just for that one image. Whereas if it had crashed afterwards, I wouldn't have even had to set that up. I could just move on to the next one. But no, it couldn't even wait. Let's cut. Go. Then, as you see here, I've apparently been working on frame 0 instead of frame 1. Invert, edit, cut. And on the page, you won't notice it, but sooner or later there'll come a time where you will sort of notice his proportions are off, because cutting all those keys reset his limbs to where the base model is supposed to be. Birds down. And let's save this. But it's the problem, and two, the headache is that it goes beyond just loading the characters and reposing them. Um, her character needed a little adjustment on the Surfaces tab, and that had to be all redone. Basically, the glossiness on her skin just was off, so it had to be toned. I think the glossiness actually had to be toned upward rather than downward, but yeah. And the other thing too, with this project, um, the history of this project actually goes back to Lil Bro. Um, because back then I had worked exclusively with the Shrimp of the House series and was sort of looking at um, just basic macro micro stuff. So I had the inspiration. It was I forget off the top of my head if I had inspiration for this one first and then Little Bro popped in my head and grabbed me. But back when I was working on Little Bro, I had just sort of, for the fun of it, mocked up some test images, and those test images sort of grabbed me. And I think I was working on Simon's Lament at the time, and I was kind of and that was one that was sort of, I think, dragging on me. I think I was excited about the project, but at the time I wasn't really excited about working on it. So like, so little bro grabbed me, and I ended up dropping Simon's Lament and just like putting a hold on the work to do little bro. But it was like, um, I think establishing this brand as sort of being beyond just the macro micro stuff and expanding into the muscle growth stuff, if you will. That's when I kind of started brainstorming other ideas. And like I said, at the top of my head, I can't remember if Burn Pit was actually an idea that popped into my head before Little Bro and just didn't really get seriously considered until after, or if it was one of those ideas that was given birth at the time I started Little Bro. But, basically this story goes back to then. And I mocked, and like, I guess just like, many of these stories, I mock up the characters, play around with them a little bit until open as layers until something about them kind of grabs me. And when I mocked up characters for this story, they didn't grab me. Like, no matter what I like, they just wouldn't grab me. So the project never went forward because I started working on other things. What are we doing? Scale 33. Because I started working on other things, so it wasn't. So like the characters I'd mocked up got set aside and just sort of ignored at that point, which was a good thing because I think the story has. I think this was an idea where I had a good premise, but there was still a lot of develop. This one needed a lot more development in my head in order to go forward. And I think, like, I don't know, what's has it been 2 years since I did Little Bro? I think it's like, when I kind of get to thinking about this one, I think that time has given me, is shoot, I need to go this way. Yeah, I'm not sure I can do this. It's sort of like give me some time to kind of flesh out this story. And I think when um, probably a couple months ago, I know I've been talking about this all throughout the videos for Iron Brotherhood United. Um, hmm. I sort of went through, mocked up new characters. So these aren't the original. These aren't even close to the original characters. I mocked up these characters. So I mocked up the characters that you're going to see in this story. 22. And I have to say, I was kind of happy with them, but not really. I think it was the same point where I kind of felt like, I don't know, something about these characters in the in sort of the work file. Um, I've got, so I save these characters individually, but when I work on them, I have a file of all of them together, and like they kind of worked for me, but they kind of didn't, and I keep going back and forth. My mind keeps going back and forth. Like, yeah, they're good, but they don't really excite me. It's they don't grab me. It's I don't know what it is. It's like something about these characters don't grab me, and I settled on using them. And I think, from the beginning, from page one, there was just something completely different about them when I put them in images for this story than when I had them rendered in images from that work file. And then when I started the pictures on page three with Wes, I think he was the biggest shock because it was something like I just didn't like that almost slacker look to him until I put him in the house and rendered the pictures there. And for some reason, like that is what sold me on him. Let's see. No, so I got to make it about him because at this point we're sort of, we're painting him as sort of the bad father husband who's realizing that he's already driven the family away. He just doesn't know it yet, and they haven't actually left yet. So this has got to appear selfish on his part. Maybe I thought we no, 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 no. I don't have to get up in the morning. That's a little bit of that's the idea we're setting up is it's pretty much everybody's been waiting for him to retire before they actually leave this family. So it so what I'm getting across in these first pages is that he's starting the next phase in life, and he thinks he can be the husband father that he should have been for the past 20 years. Only he's slowly realizing that she's already decided to divorce him. The kid is planning to cut off ties. When he going off to college, he's planning to cut off ties. It's it's like the whole point of these opening pages of this whole sequence is that he doesn't realize he's already lost his family, and that it's just a matter of time before everybody walks out on him. Layer to image size. Cut. But another thing I'm doing with this project in this part where his life, where he realizes his life isn't, um, he sort of spirals into this, I don't know, pit of depression or whatever you want to call it. Excuse me. I sort of want to kind of showcase that struggle that veterans often have of trying to reintegrate into civilian life. The idea that you go off to war and you you're basically on edge all the time because you don't know, like at any moment somebody's, the enemy is, going to pop up and try and kill you, or sort of in the case of the modern wars today, like, you don't know where the IEDs are behind like that rock or under that piece of garbage. It's just like the idea that you're always sort of on this heightened state of alert, and then you come home and you kind of struggle to wind yourself down from that. But I think on the flip side, where he's career, the idea is where he's career, he should be sort of a little more able to adjust. I mean, if he's stuck with it for 20 years, then he's sort of already found a way to balance to some degree. So the line I'm walking is I don't want him to go, I don't want to deal with a full PTSD sort of message storyline, but it's just the idea that, maybe on the broader level that all retirees face is, how do you suddenly transition from having purpose in your life to suddenly being retired and having nothing to do? So it's, once we get past sort of all this, I'm going to pause the thought there because I'm looking at this and I'm seeing things wrong. I'm going to check out the posters and see if there's a setting that's washing out the colors, or if it's just the angle and the lighting. And another thing is I'm looking at this door, and I saw the problem with the bathroom door during the last break was that for some reason the doorknobs aren't centered front to back on the door, and I'm seeing the sign here where it looks like the doorknob is hovering in midair, and you can see the back of the doorknob that's on the other side. So I think before I save that, I'm going to check this out, and it's almost guaranteed I'm going to be re-rendering this picture. So we'll come back in a second, and you'll see the results from that. Okay, so I was right. The glossiness was set too low on the pictures, and for some reason the door handle, the doorknobs all over the house are offset. I have no idea how that happened. So we re-rendered the picture. Chalk this up to, like you've just seen, just about anything that can go wrong is going wrong in this page. Open as layers. But some of this stuff kind of boggles the mind. How I'm not spotting it till now. Because when I put these sets together, pop in the furniture, before I actually get started, I do sit and render and re-render and re-render um, these sets from different angles in order to catch stuff like that before the work gets started. This one. And then it's like that still somehow slips. These things still somehow slip through. Doorknobs that aren't set right. Yeah, that's just the hint of her face. Textures that are off, that sort of thing. I don't know how these things slip through, but it is. Let's see. Open. See just a little bit of the mouth. There we go. Oops. And one thing I kind of noticed, I don't think it really made a difference in the last one. I don't know if you noticed, but if you click on the character over here in resolution level, the Genesis figures actually have the option high resolution or base, and the default setting is high resolution. When you send the character to hexagon like I did, for some reason it resets the resolution level on the character on this character, even though this specific model doesn't get sent over and back. For some reason it resets it. So every time I end up sending every time I send a character over to hexagon in order to create a static prop, I've got to remember to reset the resolution level. Sometimes the hair, no, you see most objects only have the option of base. Sometimes you'll find a hair that has the option, and that's got to be reset to. I don't think these clothes. Otherwise, the character doesn't look quite so smooth. Did I? 23. Okay. Edit, paste as new layer. Not tonight. I get a headache. No. Actually, I think this will be a case where I split it like that. This one's going to come in just a little. Too much like that. Just a very little bit. And then okay, let's try that again. Edit, cut, select, none. Edit, paste as new layer. Okay. Okay, so let's take this image layer to image size. You're kind of way back when I was talking about the text bubble. Invert. I also I also decided to give the speech bubbles a slight tinge. Oops. Undo it. Cut. So they're not pure white like the dividers are. I actually had to play around with it because I wanted something subtle that you kind of just barely notice. But a few of the color schemes that I initially liked, they just look kind of weird for speech bubbles. So I think the version I almost settled on was a slight blue tinge that wasn't quite as slight as I hoped. Let's save. And I can't move the cursor, but if you look in the little, actually no, I can. I forgot. So if you look over here where it says where it's complaining about the interface of shader, Brickyard, whatever, blah blah blah. That's because I've on sort of one of the many surfaces that I wanted to give the metal look to. There's a shader preset. I'll show you in probably about 5 minutes when this finishes rendering. Um, there's a shader preset in among the default shaders that like that you get with the program that's supposed to simulate Chrome. And it's basically whenever you get basically what I think is that when you see the error message regarding Brickyard, for some reason, it's those shaders from that pack decide they don't want to work right. Suddenly decide they don't want to work right. Which is why most of the time I'll just sort of set up the surface settings myself instead of using the preset shaders. But somehow there's always an object that gets that shader, and I end up constantly with this error message. 6 minutes. Oh my god, we still got a ways to go with her. I'm gonna cut again. And here's our picture of Maxine making excuses. File open as layers. That, better take. Let's select none. Okay. I wasn't sure if I had like overcut it by a pixel and needed to adjust, but that's good. Favorite. Take some of these off. And this hand looks off. This is going to get covered by the text bubble, I think. Maybe not. I think let's take limits off, except I think I want just a little bit more. Okay. Okay. Just readjust a little bit. Render that. Let's take my text box, Control C, here, edit, paste as new layer. this in a little bit. There we go. Okay, so that's square. And I'm going to italicize that to kind of highlight it. And then what I need to do is, I think, I need a little bit more space. So cut that, right? Okay, yes. Let's see. So the posters are kind of funny, actually. Because you want sort of like royalty-free, public domain work to populate, to make the walls more interesting. So it's like you sort of want to remind the viewers that you guys, the readers, that he's, well, now ex-military. So you want like reminders of military all over the place. So all these old World War II posters make all these old World War II posters make for great images on the walls. But what am I doing here? Layer. I want a new layer. But yeah, I'm trying to I'm trying to be careful how I'm going to say this, but I don't want a new layer. The I guess the funny thing about pouring through these old World War II posters, and I mean it in kind of like how stupid, ignorant, and naive they were back then, kind of funny. Not like the posters themselves are funny, but it's like you go through these posters, and like so many of them were either sexist or racist. It's just like, wow. So it's like you got to be careful. And then like, um, what am I going to do? Edit, select. I'm losing my, I'm losing like the workflow here, but I don't want to shrink. No, 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 no. I want it to grow. Okay. And then you get those that aren't sexist or racist, and like some of those are just phallic. And it's probably like, I don't think they I don't know if they meant it or not. It's hard to know back then. So I ended up, one I didn't use. It's like a guy riding a missile. It's like coming out of his legs. I thought that was just too funny. I thought that was just like too that was probably just like too weird for this. I only, it's, like the pictures out in the living room. I grabbed some like serious photographs off off like a royalty free picture site, but I wanted the posters, so there's only 3 in the room, but and it was easy kind of finding 3 that are innocuous. So it's like, oh my god. Let's see, layer. It's like, oh my god. And it's, again, you're not like, it's one of those instances where you're not laughing at the racism or sexism, you're laughing at the times, at the people who thought this was appropriate. Like, oh my god. It's like the old show All in the Family, where where you've got Archie Bunker making racist comments or all the time, and you're laughing at how stupid he is, or you're supposed to be laughing at how stupid he is. What am I doing? Okay, edit. Invert, select. Oh my god. So I'm just looking at this page here, and how much more do we have to go? Oh, this is almost done. Another minute or so. I'm looking at this page here. No, you go away. And I'm just looking at how, like, almost emotionless his face is at this point. And it's like, it's almost like you can already see in his face that he's almost dead inside. And I think, like I mentioned on the Patreon page when I kind of posted the first three pictures, the first three pages, give you guys a look. Like, my intention is I sort of want this to, I kind of want this to go through the whole part. I sort of want to see this downward spiral through these first 24 pages and sort of have on that 24th page where he's at his lowest point, so that you come into part two and he gets that sort of first glimpse. um, I think, like, if you get that first glimpse of where am I layer scale, uh, where he kind of glimpses sort of the weight bench that's just like tucked away in the garage. And it's like that's the moment where he decides to turn things around. He's coming into he's part two. But while, like, his descent isn't just entirely within the family, and sooner or later I'm going to get outside this. I'm going to kind of move beyond the relationship within the family. I'm not quite sure if everything will fill 20, well, I guess 23 pages. If 24th is the point where he's sort of in that self reflection mode. Later to image size, but what am I doing? Okay. I mean, it's what I'd like to do, but if it doesn't work out that way, it's not that big a deal, because I can always make the cliffhanger. I should say cliffhanger, but that break in the story can always be, say, the moment he's realizing something's off. I guess I don't know if I want to spoil it yet, but what am I doing? But you'll see it once Um, once he decides to pull out the bench and start taking out his frustration on the weights. What am I doing? Let's see. I'm talking to you guys, thinking through this thought, and I can't even focus on this. But I want to move this because that's a weird. Shoot, that would have been a good spot, but okay, just for the heck of it, I'm gonna see if I can condense this to 4 lines and have it still look right. Maybe. Yeah, you know what? I like that better. No. Okay. I'm not sure that's going to fit up here. No. I would have to go. Maybe. Can I go 5? How tight can I make this? Okay. So if I do that and put it there, that works better for me. Okay, so I'm going to delete this and start. Actually, no, I don't need to. Yeah, let's delete that and start over. So I'll take this one and go Control C. Come into here, paste as a new layer. I need it a little bigger so I got room to cut. And then resize. And we'll scale. Shoot, I don't think this will be fatal. We'll overcompensate on that side. Okay. Invert, edit, cut. So what we want to do is let's go layer, new layer. Okay. And we're going to do this over layer to image size. And let's merge that in. I think I like the position of the text box, so I'm going to move the text instead. It's always easier to move the box around the words than it is to move the words around the box, but I think that looks good. Okay, so let's save that. File, save, image, flatten, export, and we're on JPEG, so we'll hit enter, and then export. And let's see what that looks like. I'll just dump these into one. Come over here, page 5. If I knew I would spend my first night in retirement eating alone, I'd have stayed on base and shared a meal with the miserable souls stuck in the barracks. Babe, I thought we could fool around tonight since I don't have to get up in the morning. Not tonight, I got a headache. Yeah, I'm not so stupid I don't know what that means. So they have their fight, But at this point, like, from his perspective, he doesn't know if this is just an extension of their fight versus whether this is how she's really feeling about him at this point. But that was page 5. If you're still if you're still with me, I thank you for tuning in. Um, whenever I hit record next time, I hope to see you then, and I hope it's a lot more trouble-free than this one was.